Let's talk about paracord and Amsteel. These are different cordages, different ropes, however you want to say it. This is Amsteel. I'll do some close-ups in a minute. This is a Shockcord, and this particular item is a tension hook, very small. This allows you to tighten without having to worry about knots. Now, the tension hook cost me $3.25. These little things, $3.25 for a dozen. You really only need a dozen. You don't need any more. Amsteel, which is this stuff, you can buy it in 25-foot hanks, and they're $5.50 a piece. I bought two. You might want to buy more. Now, the Shockcord, this you only need one, was $4.25. I bought two. And it's 25 feet long. So I spent about 30 bucks, but if you would have bought less, it was $4 for shipping. It depends. I like to have extra when I buy stuff like my cordage, my clips, and stuff like that is what I like to have. So what's the difference between paracord and Amsteel? Many differences. Let's look at, okay, paracord, for example, 550 paracord has a breaking point of 550 pounds. So once you reach 550 pounds, it's going to break or snap. The other problem with paracord is once it gets wet, it stretches. And it really does not last that long. For years, people have told guys to buy paracord, and they were completely mistaken. You want Amsteel. Now, Amsteel has a breaking point between 1,400 and 1,600 pounds. And it does not stretch when it gets wet. It's got like a coating on it. Now, Amsteel, I'll be quite honest, is very, very hard to cut. That's why it's got the word steel in it. You really need a pair of sharp scissors or a sharp knife to cut this stuff. It's almost indestructible. Now, the number one biggest point to having Amsteel, like on a tarp, a tent, or anything like that, is the weight. When you start adding 6-foot tie-outs and you start adding, 8 of them, the weight goes up pretty quick. And it will surprise you how much weight that paracord, and then when that paracord gets wet, it's even more weight. And I'm not trying to be a weenie Grammy here. It does get heavy. And that's all there is to it. You can literally feel it in your hands when you get too many of them. Now, this stuff I like to cut in 6-foot lengths. So if my tarp has 4 on each side, then I've got 4 of them cut at 6 feet. But I also like to cut a couple that are 12 feet. In case I want to go into porch mode, I want it to run a little bit further. That's usually what I cut it in. I cut it in 6-foot lengths and 12-foot lengths is what I do. And I normally only carry 2 that are 12 foot. The rest are all 6 foot. And then I run these tension lock hooks on them. So it is what I run. Now I run the Shockcord around every point on the tarp. I just basically loop it, tie it in a knot, and that's on the tarp. When it comes time to set it up, I use this hook, okay, this tension hook, and it just clicks in there. Clicks right inside there with a hook. So now I got some play like this. You see that? And this is obviously going to the stake here. So that's kind of nice. And I'm looking at 1,400 to 1,600 pounds of pressure. So if you get a big windstorm and you're out there with your tarp and she's really yanking on that tarp, hopefully that gives it enough play so it doesn't rip your tarp. Now if you ran it with just a Amsteel on your tarp, and you can do that too if you choose, but the problem is there's no play now. So if you were out there pretty windy, you'd probably rip your tarp. There's no play at all. That's why I prefer the Shockcord. Now, there's no affiliate link. You're not going to get this off Amazon. You have to go to a place called Ripstop. And it's a cottage site is what they call it. And he has pretty much everything you can imagine. Every clip, every tie, everything you can imagine for tarps, for hammocks, for tents. I mean, even parts that you may need for your particular tents that you've lost over time. Now, you can buy a whole roll of this Amsteel, which works out cheaper, but you're going to spend over $100 for a full row, and but it'll probably last you your lifetime. But if you're looking for do-it-yourself or getting yourself lighter, you might want to look into getting rid of the paracord and just get rid of it completely. I don't take any paracord with me whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, paracord is garbage, and I don't even use it. So Amsteel, I feel is the way to go if you're going to run any form of guidelines or anything like that. Now, he's also got on Ripstop, he's got all kinds of do-it-yourself kits. A lot of people say, "Oh, I can't afford to, make a quilt." Quilts are pretty expensive. You spend $300 to $500 for a good quilt if you get it made by somebody else. But you can make a quilt yourself if you want to get on a sewing machine. It's really not that hard. And the trick to making a quilt is once you sew it up, and you can buy the kits from him, and you can buy it in any color, the nylon, anything you want. Um, and if you're using duck feathers, you may have, who knows, pillows with feathers in them. You may have things around your house with feathers in them. You may find them at garage sales. You can buy the stuffing, and a lot of people now they use a machine where it's got a big round thing they hook up the quilt to, and they shoot the feathers into it, and it's really maintained, and they don't lose any, and maximizing their profits when these companies make these quilts. The best way to put a quilt together, do not do it in your room. Don't do it in your house. Set up a 4-man tent or, 2-man tent, big dome tent. Go inside that tent and start taking the feathers and shoving them inside your quilt. And make sure you wear a mask. And when you're done that, you'll have your quilt all ready to go and packed, and the feathers were controllable because they were inside a much smaller environment. And that's what a lot of guys do. Now, you can build yourself your own quilt a heck of a lot cheaper than you can by buying them if you use your imagination a little bit. And they're really not all that complicated to do. And before we had all these cottage sites in the old days, that's what people did. They made their own quilts and put them together. So that is something to consider if you don't have the $400 or $500 for a quilt and you want to figure out a way, well, how do I make a quilt that's good for 0 below? A lot of times you can go to garage sales and you can find these feathered sleeping bags, down sleeping bags, that people don't even know what the value of them are, and you can pick them up for 10, $20. You're not buying them for the sleeping bag, you're buying them because you want the feathers and you want to up the feather count. So let me zoom in on this and show you what this Amsteel looks like and exactly how I put it together. Okay, here's a close-up of the Amsteel, and you'll see here how thin that really is and how I've connected this thing here, which is the tension hook, which is here. Okay, it's really tiny. And this here's the Shockcord. So you're really working with some tiny items that basically hold a lot of weight, a whole lot lighter, and a whole lot better for your tents, for your hammocks, for your tarps, whatever you choose to do. Now, you can buy some of this stuff off Etsy. I mean, I've seen guys sell the Zing and stuff like that for $25, and if you don't want to tie it, but you're stuck with whatever they cut it at. I've always preferred to have it where I choose my lengths. Like I cut mine 6 feet, and then I cut a couple that were 12 feet. Um, it just gives me a little bit more versatility. And like I was saying, when I go 12 feet, I can go in porch mode with my tarp and then run it from the tarp over to the wood I'm using to hold up the tarp and then down to the stake that I'm tying it off with. And it's just me that I like to have a little bit more selection. And like I was saying, I don't run paracord at all because paracord gets wet, it stretches, it's only 550 pounds of pressure. It's garbage. And that's all there is to it. Where Amsteel is worth its weight in gold. And how you hook these up, make sure the hook is down and then the rope goes through the back and then comes around to the front. Just make sure the hook is facing down when you do it and you'll have it the right way. And just grab the end and pull and you'll find out whether or not that's actually working for you. So it's not hard to do, and you got to buy it from Ripstop. There's other places. That's where um, you got to look around. I found Ripstop to be the most affordable, so up to you. So anyhow, if you're looking for some cool tie-outs, I'll put a couple links on what I bought, and not affiliate links or anything like that, just stuff that I buy, and you may want to put it on your tarps. All right, I'll catch you guys later on the next one.